I think one of the misnomers is that, and I think this is an issue with men in particular, is like you only go to the doctor if something hurts, right? If you have pain and discomfort, like that's when you should go to the doctor. And I didn't have any of that. Like I just, over the span of a couple weeks, just in the shower was like, this feels a little off, right? I have 2 testicles and they should feel the same, right? And one of them is much harder than the other one. This feels off to me. And so this was early 2021, so peak COVID. In the States, everyone is encouraged to get what we call an annual physical, just a checkup. You go to your doctor, you do your labs, check your blood pressure, stuff like that, right? And so I didn't do that in 2020 because of COVID and whatever. You know, thinking that it's probably time to go do a checkup and then I'll just mention this and see what they say and whatever, right? So I went in, did the blood work. My doctor called me in a telehealth visit going over the results. I had mentioned, oh, by the way, you know, like I think something feels a little off with my testicles. And she said, okay, well, you know, if you're worried about it, I'll put you in to do an ultrasound at the hospital, and we'll talk about it, whatever, you know, whatever the result is. And so pretty quickly after that, I went over to the hospital, laid down, did the ultrasound, had this super awkward interaction with this student who was like fumbling around with the ultrasound machine, and finally the instructor, professor was like, let me just get in there and do it. And I think it was probably because she like saw something and was you know needed to confirm or something like that. So all of a sudden, like all these people are kind of interested, and that's when I first started thinking like, oh, this is probably something, right? And then yeah, so I left, went home, and I got a call probably the next day from my doctor, and was like, yeah, you have a big tumor on your testicle. We booked you in to see the urologist. This was a Friday. We booked you in to see the urologist on Monday, and they'll tell you what the next steps are. So then that whole weekend, you're just like, oh shit, like, you know. And it was wild because hours after I got that call, my buddy and I were doing this crazy running challenge that he found called the 4x4x48 challenge. You run 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. And we had planned to do this weeks before, you know. And so, you know, this whole time, and I'm telling him like what's going on, and, you know, it was a good distraction, to be honest, right? So Sunday afternoon, we finished the 48 miles. I took a nap. I went to a baby shower on Zoom. You know, woke up the next day, went to the urologist, and that's when they're like, yeah, we got to take it out. We don't mess around, you know. I thought I was going to be going in for, I don't know if I was going to go in for the biopsy or, you know, oh, well, surely they're going to biopsy this. You know, my knowledge at that point was just breast cancer or something, right? You take a little sample and you see what's going on. But when the doctor was like, no, like, we don't mess around. Like, there's too many systems down there, and that you don't biopsy this. It's like, oh, wow, okay. So, and then, yeah, I had the surgery a couple weeks after that, and the thing that's crazy is you don't even know if it's cancer until it comes out and you send it to pathology and you find out. So in the same sentence, they're like, yes, it was cancer, yes, you're cancer-free, right? And it's just, you know, it's like, okay, that's it, really? Okay, wow. And yeah, so, and luckily for me, you know, I didn't have to do chemo, I caught it early enough. I had the less common, less aggressive type. I had a Pierce seminoma, and yeah, so it was just like this really. It was a very short amount of time. It was 2-3 months or something like that. But it was obviously very mentally kind of exhausting, more than anything. It was one of these things where you can't definitively say you have cancer at that stage, right? So you're just sort of like, okay, what is it? What does this mean? What's gonna happen? You get on Reddit and you read all these threads and you try to learn everything you can, but obviously, you know, you don't know how much of this is gonna be relevant to your situation, right? I had 2 kids already, so I wasn't really worried about that. We really, you know, I could have banked sperm or something like that, but I didn't. We just decided not to do that. And the urologist too, he was like, look, you know, that's one thing that I've appreciated is the human body has lots of redundancy, right? And it's one thing you don't really think about, where think about all the things in your body. You lose one kidney, you have another one. You lose an eye, you have another one. And so a testicle is the same thing, where if you have one, that's enough to have kids and function properly, testosterone production, etc. So I'll kind of go back a little bit. My youngest was in diapers when COVID started. 2 working parents, and chopping up our schedule, so we're just trading the kids back and forth. Everybody has their own COVID story, but so obviously that was challenging. I run a video production business. We do a lot of event work. All that's gone. So by the time that I was diagnosed, I had really put myself in a position to, I was doing pretty good, And then you get something like this, it's just completely outside of your control. And in a couple months before that, I had lost a friend in a car accident, And it's just one of these things where also, you have no control over it, right? You just can only deal with the hand you've been dealt. So, yeah, it was definitely sobering in that way, where it's like I've tried really hard to get through the pandemic with the kids, running a business, with the family, marriage, etc. You're trying to do whatever you can to find some sense of normalcy in this crazy time that we all dealt with, and then putting this on top of it, and it's yeah, you figured all that out, but it actually doesn't matter. There are still other things that are going to happen that you're going to have no control over. Go ahead and deal with this now, So yeah, it was a real shock. Coming out of anesthesia, my first thought in discomfort was from the breathing tube. I didn't even really feel anything below the waist or anything, and that again too is like I mentioned, it's just I had very little pain and very little sign that this was a problem, other than just my own kind of intuition and recognizing that something doesn't feel right, and it's probably best if I go get a professional to take a look at it, right? And so really the biggest thing for me has just been mental, and you have this life-changing event, and it certainly has changed me for the better. I think a lot of people say things like that. I'm obviously grateful that I didn't have to do any chemo. Grateful I didn't have any long-term complications, but it did make me appreciate my body more. I definitely, coming out of it, especially when you first get the diagnosis, it's a lot of sleepless nights, and it's a lot of, what's going to happen, what does this mean, so yeah. So I think just being able to recognize, I was pretty healthy before then, but I'm much healthier now, and I'm much more active now, and I definitely appreciate and take care of my body more than I did before. Knowing that in the US, 9,000 men get diagnosed every year, and here in the UK, it's 2,000 men. That's still many men every single day that get this news, right? I think it's 6 here, it's probably 25 or something in the States. And I just thought it was strange that I'd never heard of I didn't know anybody who had dealt with this. And I thought that was kind of weird. And so I just decided, okay, I'm gonna be that person. So I got on Facebook and I just started talking about my testicle all the time. The night before my surgery, we had a Zoom party. We had a farewell to righty party. I had a big R balloon, over my shoulder. And I just was trying to stay positive and use it as an opportunity to educate people about what this is, and also just say, hey, if the rest of your life, if you come across someone, your brother-in-law, or your friend from grade school, send them over. Give them my number. We'd be happy to talk to them. Just being a resource. And when I did that, I actually did have a friend of mine from high school who I completely lost touch with, and he reached out, and he had stage 2 several years before, and so he was telling me about his experience, but he wasn't public about it. And I went on his page and I kind of looked through, and no mention at all. And he did say, he was like, if I were to do it again, I would have done what you did, and just be very public about it and say, hey, here's what's going on. Keep me in your thoughts, and just being able to be a resource was important to me. So when I was diagnosed, my kids were probably like 5 and 2. And so how do you explain cancer to a 5 or 2-year-old? And I remember we said something along the lines of, there's something in daddy's body that went wrong and we have to take it out, you know? And they could definitely understand that, you know, like they're not getting all up in there and feeling or anything like that, but you know, like we were straightforward with it. You know, they knew why I was having surgery. I don't know if they knew what a testicle was before then, but they certainly did after. And yeah, we just thought that it made sense to let them know what's going on. And now too, you know, as they get older I'm sure they're going to be talking to their friends, and I'll be talking to their friends' parents about it. And again, like I really feel like I am the case study for this is why you go get something checked out, you know? Even if it doesn't hurt, and even if it isn't anything, it's still best to go get it checked out, get tested, and stay on top of it. So I like to joke that whatever the opposite of you get what you pay for is how I felt since moving to London. After the pandemic, cancer, all these other things, we got an opportunity to move to London for my wife's job. And we really didn't even think twice. It was like, oh yeah, we should definitely do that. We needed to shake it up. We needed to change the pace, change the scenery. It was a really good time to just make a big life change. And obviously the cancer was part of that discussion, part of the decision, part of really wanting to do something very big and very different. And it's been fantastic. It was really like one of the best decisions we could have made to move here to the UK and start a new life, really. Working through NHS and the surveillance schedule there is much more frequent. You know, before I would pop in for a chest x-ray, you're in and out in 30 seconds, and it costs a lot of money. And here, I get booked in for a MRI, you know, or a PET scan or something like that every 3 months instead of 6 months. I'd never done an MRI before, and so that first one where I put on the gown and stuff, I'm just like, is this really necessary? But they've been very thorough. I mean, NHS has been great, so I'm working with Royal Marsden and Imperial College at Charing Cross. So between the two, and like, I never even had an oncologist in the States. Yeah, it was all done through urology. And so I would go do blood work, I would do the chest x-ray, and they say, okay, you're fine, come back in 6 months, right? And, but here, like I said, it's been much more thorough, and I really appreciate it. Talking to my doctors and doing my own research, I appreciate that there's a recognition that there's been kind of a over-treatment in previous generations of men, where even if you didn't really need the chemo, they would still give it to you, and with the thought process of, let's just knock it out just in case, you know. And obviously you have a whole lot of side effects coming from chemo, and so, you know, you're just weighing, right, like which is worse, side effects from chemo or potential spread from something that wasn't caught in the original surgery or something. If you're in the shower and something feels a little bit weird, there's no harm in telling your GP. You don't have to be embarrassed about it. It could be nothing, and it could be something serious, and you don't know until you have a professional check it out.